You are listening to audio from the Decidedly podcast. This episode is a highlight clip from this week's full episode. To listen in on the complete conversation, see the show notes for the link to the complete show. You can help us out by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate every bit of your support. I'm Morgan McKittrick, your producer, and this is Decidedly.
What do you need to know that you don't know? Let's get that information first. What is the likelihood that
would be the out of the gate first part of the process is what do you need to know that you don't know?
It depends. It totally depends because some people come to me and they have 2 job offers and they really don't know which one to choose. And some come to me and say, I don't want to know. I don't know what to do with my life. I could go any direction.
That's more open-ended, right? So if it's a binary choice, I would think the framework probably works a little better or is more defined anyway.
It is. Right? It is. It's much more constrained. But that question, what do you need to know that you don't know, it's relevant no matter what. It's just when does it show up? Like when does it come up in the conversation?
It's always part of the process then.
I think it has to be. We always have to ask ourselves that.
Walk me through so I come to you and I say, all right, I'm really wrestling with, go down path A, path B. Right. How are you going to walk me through the process around that decision?
So I adopt kind of a loose adoption of the expected utility model, which is kind of just a basic model of rational choice. It's been used in economics and, learned it in sociology as well. But it's just really a combination of what are the potential options, what are certain conditions or what ifs that could happen, and then what are some outcomes that it could occur. And so like one great example is I want to go for a walk. Should I carry an umbrella? Yes, I could. No, I might. I would, or no, I would not. But there's this condition. There's this what if that's kind of a wild card. Is it going to rain? I don't know. So I'll walk through clients through the kind of what ifs. Should I stay with my husband or not? He's going to therapy. He could change. So that's kind of a wild card. What if he changes? What if I divorce him and he actually turns into the perfect man? Then what? So I walk through that stuff. And then it's the outcomes, the then what's.
Yeah.
And then you put values on them. And that's really the most important thing. Not the most important thing, but a very important thing that people don't do enough of is they don't put numbers on things like, or values. It doesn't even have to be numbers, but my husband could go to therapy and he could turn into the perfect man. Okay, he could, but what's the chance? What is the likelihood of that? And we don't often ask ourselves about, well, what are the chances of that? Right. I could take this job. I could make it anything I wanted. Yeah, but what are the chances of that? 20%, 40%, 80%? And then you can actually think about, well, what do I need to know in order to know that number? And it's the same thing with outcomes. So say I stay with my husband. He doesn't turn out to be the perfect guy. I'm with him for another 5 years and he's still an asshole or whatever the reason, right? What on a scale of 0 to 10, is that a 2? As in like really, really bad? Is that kind of a 6? Like, yeah, I could live with that. Like, let's put a number on it. And then you just you just do the math, the chance times the outcome. And that's kind of
it seems like if you're going through that sort of framework of looking at the probability outcomes, you would need to then also weigh the importance, right? This has a 20% chance of happening, but it's my number one thing. Right.
Yeah. Right. Like, and this came up with COVID all the time. Well, it's such a low chance of getting it, blah, blah, blah.
If I get it, I can't breathe ever again.
Right. Or I think about my mom, who is, if she gets COVID, she's older. She could die. Like that's a 0 on a scale of 0 to 10 of like how good that is. So yeah. Super.
I remember talking to a friend of mine. I really was not worried about it at all. It's like, whatever, who cares? Right. I already have asthma. Like we're good, I already have COVID basically.
Right.
So he goes, yeah, but I talked to my friend who's a doctor at, some fancy Ivy League smart guy. And he goes, this new variant, and I don't even remember which variant this was. It's like causing blood clots.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, well, now I'm concerned.
Right.
I wasn't concerned about an upper respiratory infection. I am concerned about blood clots in my legs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't that worried about it either until I had a doctor come into the office and he and his wife both had masks on.
And you're like,
And I'm like,
right. Oh, and that is how other people's decisions influence yours.
Right. It influenced me because I'm like, this guy should know what he's talking about,
Totally. And that's
Did
an
you
example.
bring him in the office and go, you can take it off if you want. No one's watching.
Right. Why don't you take it off?
I'm telling you.
You think it was all performative?
I'm just playing.
But that's a great example of like how we don't make decisions because we're weighing the pros and cons, but because we trust somebody who's already made the decision. It's like, he's already decided to wear a mask. We trust him. So we're just going to do what he does.
Mm-hmm. How often do people do that in the wrong way? Right? People rely on experts or others, not even experts, but just other people.
I think a lot of experts aren't experts, to be quite frank. I think a lot of people they get an idea and they think it's a good one, and it might be, and they think they know. And this is where, what you see is all there is to see thing comes in. They might write a book, they might get on podcasts, suddenly they're this expert, but there's no real evaluation of, well, what are your credentials? Where did you come from? Like, I wouldn't go to you guys for medical advice, but I would totally go to you guys for financial advice because you have the credentials, right? Mm-hmm. If you had a bad experience with COVID and you wrote a book about it and now you're an expert on COVID, I don't know if I would, I don't know, you're not Fauci, right? But for, in most cultures, if you have charisma, you can sell anything. And I think that could hurt people when they follow the lead of someone like that. I think politicians, it's a great example. A lot of people vote for the guy they would like to have a beer with. Mm-hmm. Think about all the guys you've had beers with. Like, half of them I wouldn't want to drive me home. Yeah. Right. So, but we think that way because, and then we vote for an idiot, or we don't, I don't know, depending, but that's another way it could go the wrong way. Dating.
I talk with people, I just had some conversations recently, and one of the people in the group was just espousing some stuff that I didn't even get into it yet because it was conspiracy type stuff.
QAnon.
It wasn't QAnon, but it was stupid. Just, it was sort of along the lines of they're putting microchips in the vaccine type level of.
Okay, BS. So we're like conspiracy theory layering.
Yeah. And so how do people that are in your social circle are people that you care about, right? But I would think by definition, and you want those people to make good decisions. But I was actually wrestling with, do I talk with this person about this crazy theory they have? Or do I just back away from it because I'm not sure I'm skilled enough to change the mind of somebody that's so off? You know what I mean? I mean, they're just misinformed. And how do I go through a process of fixing that if I'm so inclined? Right.
You go to my website and I have a guide on my website called How to Change a Misinformed Mind. And it was featured in Fast Company, which is my way of using a substitution question to say, hey, you should, because Fast Company featured it. Do you see how I'm using a trick here? Anyway. And in
social
that guide,
proof there.
It is. It's a nudge. It's not a rational reason to download my guide. But it's a lot of it is, first of all, do you want to? Like, what are the pros and cons of even trying for you? But if you decide to, and I think if it's someone you love, like if it's a parent or a spouse or a friend, a lot of what gets people to change their mind isn't facts or information. It's who you are. So it's the reverse of that. It's, in jujitsu, it's position before submission. You have to be in the right place to kind of to have any sort of impact. And a lot of that is building relationships. And that's why I think this tendency we have to feel uncomfortable around people who don't agree with us and then pull away. And then we kind of like have coffee with them and then we spit all these facts out and think they should just get it. Like it's totally the opposite way to go. It doesn't work that way. You have to be in their circle. You have to be in their lives. They have to trust you. So when you detach, that's betrayal. They don't feel connection and they won't listen to you. So maintain that connection. That's really more important than what you say. And then facts, who gives a shit about facts? Like, it's really about stories. It's about experiences. That's where people really connect. Using stories to make a point rather than statistics is the best way to go.
You see that a lot in State of the Union speeches. The presidents will, rather than just espouse the facts, they'll say, oh, little Johnny, and
totally.
There he is. Stand up.
Yeah, stand up,
Totally.
little Johnny. And so,
Totally. The trick is to tell stories that are backed by fact. And I think a lot of people tell stories and think that a story is fact. And unless you have a lot of people with the same stories, you don't know if that story is an outlier or kind of a weird, freakish situation.
I mean, does it matter when we're talking like politics? I don't even know if it matters if it's an outlier or not. It's like if it's a story, it could be a made up story. But
it is. A lot of times it is.
It's a totally fake story, and it's not really supported by the facts, but you were kind of already leaning this way anyway. So here, we're going to feed you, feed the ideological monster that lives within your mind a little bit with this story, and then you're good. You're set.
That's how QAnon does its magic. It doesn't come out with facts. It comes out with questions. Have you ever noticed that 5G? And then they leave you to make the connection. And then you make that connection. You feel like you own that story.
That's so true. God, they're like all the conspiracy videos are like, look at this, the score on the Atlanta Hawks, or Atlanta Falcons football game was 42-9. And Trump, when his watch was set to 429. And so that's, what is he saying? Atlanta?
What does that mean? You figure it out. You figure that out. Like, of course it means something. And just by asking that question, you're implying there's something not quite right. So you're throwing bias into that direction. And our brains are natural storytellers. We churn out stories all the time. We don't need help. But when we're helped along, and it could be really dangerous.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think we're picking on the QAnon a little bit.
And it could go
it's
every
everyone.
direction. Every direction.
Have you heard both sides?
Have you heard the Tom Segura skit about how he thought Tommy Lee Jones was gay just because his dad said so? And then he just runs for for years. He's thinking this, doesn't validate it, doesn't verify it, just goes on until one day somebody who knows Tommy Lee Jones is like, no, dude, not true. It doesn't matter. It could be about anything. It could be about which lipstick works. We just believe stories.
Yeah. Well, be careful who you trust, especially your dad.
Don't trust your dad. I'm not saying that.
All right. So I understand what your point about if I'm to try and make a decision to change a misinformed mind, right? Keep the relationship, share stories, be open, those types of things. It's sort of kind of drip on them, continue to and hope that it's eventually going to work, right? You're probably not going to get success right out of the gate in the first. I've never had anybody, I share something with them. They go, oh, you know what? Now that I hear you say that, maybe all this climate change stuff, maybe I was completely wrong about, now that you've said what you said, right?
Yeah.
But what if I want to challenge my own beliefs? I think there are things that we all believe that may not be true, and we don't know which ones those are. Oh my gosh, unfortunately.
He asked me this question a few months ago. He goes, so some people believe like wacky stuff, right? I go, yeah. He goes, like crazy conspiracy theories. I go, yeah. And then there's people that believe like sort of somewhat believable stuff. Yeah. And then people who believe like very believable stuff, but you just know they're wrong. Yes. Right. He goes, so what do you believe that's wrong? I go, I don't know.
Well,
couldn't answer.
You don't know.
That's I know.
Thanks for making the great decision to listen in to this week's episode highlight. If you want more of what you just heard, see the show notes for the full episode. As always, for the latest decision-making tips, find us on decidedlypodcast.com or on Instagram @decidedlypodcast. And be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter from the link in the show notes. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review as well. We read all of your comments, so if you learned some decision-making tips today, let us know. Until next time, this is Decidedly. Insights, advice, and comments provided by Sean Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.